solution for energy companies. And today, I'm thrilled to welcome you to AI and Energy, Powering Sustainable Growth in Africa panel. Did you know that over 600 million Africans to this day don't have access to electricity? AI might be poised just to change that. And today, I'm thrilled to be joined by 3 global experts that will help us explore how AI can help harness renewable energy better and how it can improve and transform access to the energy. Please join me in welcoming our esteemed panelists. The first one is Dr. Satyam Priyadarshi. He's the first data scientist in oil and gas that would get the title of Chief Data Scientist, and a pioneer in AI and quantum computing. He is visionary that will help us explore how cutting-edge technology can reshape Africa's energy landscape. Welcome, Dr. Priyadarshi. Fabrice Perret, Head of Venture Capital at Proparco. Fabrice is managing €200 million startup portfolio for various industries. He is a pragmatic investor and will give us our perspective that will ground our discussion in market realities. Welcome, Fabrice. Dr. Muaz Ali. Dr. Muaz is senior researcher and policy associate at EarthNA. He is focusing his research on energy access in sub-Saharan Africa. His critical lens will address equity and policy challenges. Welcome, Dr. Muaz. And with that, we'll start our panel. We had really interesting discussions with our panelists before coming here. And I'd like to start with the technology first. So the first question to you, Fabrice. Africa's solar and wind potential is immense, but clean tech valuations often outpace market readiness. What's one policy or market shift that you think is required to attract sustainable venture capital investment in African clean energy startups?
Thank you, Valentina. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you in this wonderful university and to participate to this panel with my co-panelists, very estimated and with a higher degree of technology than me, because I'm only the finance guy, but I will try to give my point of view on that. So to answer to your question, Valentina, you know, the market, the African VC market is currently dominated by the fintechs. Fintechs represent approximately 60% of all VC investment in Africa, but clean techs are growing very fast, and clean techs are now the second VC verticals. To give you an example, on the last 3 years, more than $1.4 billion were invested in clean techs in Africa. So it's huge, but they also face some issues. First of all, it's a nascent market. So as any nascent market, there is all the models are not be tried or tested, and so you have to be sure that the ideas are very sustainable. And this issue reflects also on valuations. You know, as everybody wants to now to invest in green, in climate mitigation, in clean tech, green energy, etc. So it's a very good thing. It's a very good thing that more and more money goes to the clean energy. But on the wrong side, I will say, it's despite of the VC winters that occurs 2 years ago, the valuation on the clean techs remains in the very high side of the markets, and investors need to have more rigor, in fact, to choose the best clean tech that answer to the customer needs, and not only supporting the companies that sell the best ideas, but maybe not realistic ideas. So the market has to go towards more profitability and more sustainability.
Thank you, Fabrice. Indeed, we need some reality in what's possible in this market before we proceed. I have a next question to Dr. Muez. So Mr. Yassin said this morning that we don't want to leave anyone behind in the sustainability journey. And when we spoke, when we just met, you mentioned there are some risks in inequality when it comes to energy access in Africa. So how can policy frameworks ensure Africa leapfrogs to sustainable energy without repeating fossil fuel heavy models?
Thank you, Val. I think the question for Africa, given the status of energy access, I think energy access, at least from an African perspective, seems to be more of a priority than whether that energy is clean or not. And some researchers also ask the question, should Africa leapfrog to begin with? Right? Some countries have industrialization ambitions, and these ambitions can only be achieved, or to some degree, mostly achieved through fossil fuel heavy industry. But that doesn't mean that renewable energy should be overlooked, especially from a price perspective. Renewable energy is much more competitive now. But whatever policy frameworks are in place have to be in line with what African countries or specific African countries view themselves or view their kind of ambitions in the near future, whether it's to 2030, 2040, 2050. So if you have a clean technology or a clean energy strategy for 2050, and it is in line with your industrialization strategy or it's in line with your development strategy, then it would make sense. But leapfrogging to clean technology for the sake of leapfrogging is probably not going to be very useful because of the lack of alignment between the two. In terms of policy frameworks, I think in order to leapfrog, you need to be able to do so, right? So you need the money for it. There needs to be money available. You need to have a long-term development strategy, so you know exactly why you're leapfrogging and when you're leapfrogging and the time frames that you have to work with. And you need to have some idea of why you're going to leapfrog to achieve what goal. So for example, if you want to industrialize, you want to produce certain high-value goods for export, you also you need to start thinking about trade and how your position is in terms of global trade. And a lot of African countries are disadvantaged when it comes to trade policy, which is something I can talk about later. So I think the policy frameworks broadly need to focus on availability of finance, long-term development strategies, and how these can be aligned in order to achieve not necessarily a leapfrog towards clean technology, but an energy mix that incorporates clean technology when it is useful, given the development strategies in place.
Yeah, this is definitely a very serious consideration. One, what you said, Fabrice, first of all, you have to have a market and the technology has to work for that specific market. And second, you do need to have a strategy, long-term strategy in place to be able to decide what your energy mix is going to be and whether you want to leapfrog or not. I would like to jump to the AI and technology. It's a hot topic. Everybody wants AI, especially in the energy space. I had some clients saying, I just want AI, give me that. Dr. Satyam, you've pioneered AI and energy since 2005, maybe earlier. And what do you think, how could AI and quantum computing accelerate clean energy adoption in Africa over the next decade?
Good afternoon. First of all, thanks to the Deep Tech Summit team for inviting me. So question is, how is AI or quantum computing change the landscape for energy? First thing to remember, like I think in the earlier mornings, we were talking about some agriculture and talked about what is important for agriculture. But I think the most important thing for any area is energy security. And energy security is a combination of energy mix and everything associated with it. Now, if you look at how solutions that are built on applications of AI can help, my co-panelists just talked about clean energy and the energy mix. The question is, can we really replace everything that we use from fossil fuel? Today, the world uses roughly about something like 8,000 million ton equivalent of energy from fossils. If you have to really replace that with clean energy, you need millions of photovoltaic cells which have an efficiency only of about 25%, 15 to 25%. Wind energy and solar energy, when transmitted, they roughly lose anywhere between 20 to 30% on transmission. So, and of course, we all know the challenges with the fossil fuels, whether it is coal, whether it is oil, gas, geothermal. We know their supply chain is anywhere inefficient from 35 to 60%, depending on which aspect of it you are talking about. So all these inefficiencies, if we are able to really reduce, then we can actually make sure that our energy security is really at the high level. And that's where algorithms that we can develop, the models that we can develop into the right context, that is very important. One of the things is there is no one size fit all. There is no something called AI that will work for everything. There is solutions that have to be customized and contextualized in what context we are talking about. So if we are talking about energy mix, is it on the so to say production side, or is it on the consumer side? So if you look at that, these are two optimization problems that you are looking at. How much of the different mix of energies we are going to generate, and how do we transmit it at the lowest cost possible, and then how do we get that benefit to the consumers, and how are they going to pay for it, whether it is generated from solar versus wind versus fossil fuel. So if you think of it, these are a couple of optimization problems on each end of the spectrum, and that's where the algorithms become really, really powerful. But again, this will depend from one country in Africa to another country, or within a country itself, it could be very different from cities to municipalities and others. And hence, what we are looking at, one is the traditional kind of applications. The other is how we are actually looking at optimizing these mechanisms, right? For example, wind farms. Today, when wind farms fail, how do we actually make them more reliable? Then we can actually do some kind of algorithms for it, or what kind of new materials we can actually put, like changing the way how we generate these wind farms, or windmills, or wind fins, whatever you want to call it. Should we leverage nanotechnology, advancements in nanotechnology that are there? Should we leverage the advancement in sensors? All these things actually incorporate into models for AI that can really help us.
Thank you. This is a great insight. Indeed, the AI is excelling at complex optimization problems if it's trained right and trained for the specific application with a specific data. So we discussed the energy technology itself. Now let's jump into the energy access and decentralization. So my first question is to Dr. Muez. So when we talked, you raised some concerns about unfair contracts in solar home systems in Africa. How can decentralized energy models promote economic equity rather than widen inequality gap?
Thank you, Val. I think it's important to point out here that, I mean, this is probably not a thing to say at a technology summit, but technology has not always, it's not new technologies, revolutions in technology are not always good for everybody. You know, there are experiences where we've had a significant amount, consistent economic growth because of technological development. So, for example, post-World War II, technological development saw, you know, economies in the West and around the world grow at about 3-4% every year for a period of 25, 30 years. But the reason for that was that there were certain policies in place where you had a counter kind of force to the people who developed the technology and the people who own the technologies. And that is mostly in labor unions who, you know, who basically get people's rights or ensure that people have rights. So you have, you know, technology, it started creating jobs as opposed to getting rid of jobs. a lot of people today are warning that AI might potentially have negative implications. So digitization had a similar effect where it benefited people who are at the top end of the education spectrum. So people with university degrees are more likely to see their incomes increase, but people with only high school degrees have had stagnating incomes over the last 20, 30 years. And in conditions of inequality, where we've seen inequality globally increase over the last 30 years, technology is likely to make things worse. It doesn't have to be that way. There are certain policy interventions that can make it better, which is more representation, more labor rights, etc. But one interesting example is the solar home systems that you mentioned. And just so the crowd understands what they are, solar home systems are these small modular systems that you put in your house, and they're mostly designed for really poor, low-income households. And these households are poor to the point where a modular system, which costs around $30 to $40 or $50, they can't afford the full price of it, so they get it. They pay some sort of deposit, and then they pay it over 2 years' time, right? And in this sector specifically, you had the rise of new companies that provide the system, so they're essentially energy companies. But over time, because they realized that their target market does not have the payments, they don't have the purchasing power to actually buy these systems outright, they developed these new financing mechanisms. So now these companies are energy companies, but they're also fintechs, right? So what they have now is they have a lot of information on customers where they understand their payment behavior. They have information on because these are contracts where these people have to pay a monthly fee, they get a lot of information about their person, where they live, and they also own the information that shows their payments over time. And obviously, in order to do that, in order the company to make that commitment, they need to get these people to sign contracts, right? And we've had a look at these contracts because we've been studying the sector for a while, and they're quite complicated contracts, right? There's I've signed terms and conditions, many terms and conditions in my life that I've never read, right? And when I did try to read them, I didn't understand most of them. And in these contracts, they have statements like your data can be used by a third party. I don't know what the third party is, right? And it's very likely that these people are not educated. They have no idea what these contracts are that they're signing. And so these companies now collect this massive amount of data, and they're using AI tools to analyze this data to try and make predictions about when people might default, or who is going to be a good customer, or who should they take a risk with, and who should they not take a risk with. And so now you have this use of these new technological tools, these new algorithms that tell you who you should sell to and who you shouldn't, right? And this is a low-income group of people. This is your target market. And basically what that does is that it allows the companies to have this power over its target market, and then it allows them to use that data to sell off to other digital platforms. So the same people buying solar home systems can be targeted for finance products, right? Or these same companies can start offering other finance products. So you have this platformization process where there's a massive power imbalance between the owners of the data, which are the companies, versus the producers of the data, which are these low-income poor households. And the solution to that is to basically regulate the market, right? And because this is a new sector, it's been around for almost 10 years now, it is not regulated. And the biggest kind of region in sub-Saharan Africa is in East Africa. So you have Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, Tanzania. And there are no policies in place. So a lot of countries do not have data protection policies, or they don't have regulations specific to that sector. There is an industry association, it's called GOGLA, which has principles of operation for the companies operating in the sector, but these are, they're suggestive. You can choose to abide by them or not. But there's no regulation in place to protect basically the low-income households who are buying these products and signing contracts that they don't understand. So in this case, technology benefits one side and disadvantages the other. So I think in order to ensure that AI use in the energy sector is equitable, there has to be the necessary policy interventions to make sure that happens.
Wow, this is such a great insight, Dr. Muez. I think what you mentioned is this is an entirely new business model, a combination of the utility company, fintech, but also insurance company in a way where you collect information about your insured or somebody who you sell, or whether you should sell to them or not. I think AI, at least from what I'm hearing, can play a number of roles here, but I would like to get Dr. Satyam's opinion. How could AI help solve problem one, understanding a contract, and two, enhancing energy independence in Africa?
So certainly the challenge that is put up here is that technology helps one side of the problem and doesn't help the poor people in that sense. Actually, in fact, the same technology that helps this, the producers or the companies actually can help the people as well, because they can actually control what data needs to be supplied to them, right? At the same time, they can demand like whatever the analysis is being done, that can be actually provided to them, and then limit the access to it. The technology solutions exist. It is the willing power of the controlling authorities or the regulatory bodies that have to really implement it. So in that sense, technology can really benefit both sides, right? But at the same time, one has to really realize that if you want to build innovative solutions for the large masses, it doesn't matter whether it is poor or rich people, it is actually important to leverage technology at various levels, at a various complexity. Correct? And then we can build solutions that are appropriate for that area. So one of the things when we are implementing AI solutions, as I said earlier, they have to be customized and contextualized. It is not one solution fits all. The challenge that happens today is like we look at a solution that is developed in a different country and we say, oh, let's take it and implement in our country or in our area or in our field. That's when the things start breaking up. One has to understand the problem, that is the business problem, and then saying what are the things, checks and balances we need to put, what are the models we are going to put, and then actually build the solutions or customize the solutions if you are going to use somebody else's solution. And when you do that, then you are actually benefiting the whole spectrum equitable, right? That requires investment in people. It's not about just technology. It's a question of how do we understand our problem? Do we really understand our problem better? Or what needs to be done? It's not just about implementing technology by itself.
Yeah, indeed, the technology doesn't do any good if it's not applied correctly in the right context. Fabrice, question to you, building up on what Dr. Satyam said. You've invested in different technologies in various sectors, and we're talking about decentralization and different policy aspects of it. But as far as when it comes to technology itself, in your portfolio, what are the most commercially viable technologies that could be implemented in Africa as far as decentralization goes today?
You know, for decentralization, Proparco is strongly involved in this industry because access to energy is key for Africa and for emerging countries. And when you have the energy, after you can develop other business, create jobs, etc. So just to give you a quick view on what we did in decentralized energy, over the last 5 years, we have invested in debt and equity more than 200 million euros in distributed renewable energy in emerging countries. And we invested in all the type of off-grids project like solar home system, as you said, mini-grid, CNI, and ESCO. And what we observe in these different type of decentralized energy is all of them has grown, but we also note some disparities. For example, for the SHS, they continue to contribute to the access of energy of more people, but the business model of this type of SHS is not so strong, and because of low margin and high maintenance cost and distribution cost. So we see a growth, but also some underperformance in the financial and economics units. For the mini grids, for example, we see a lot of new seats and also new seats operated by private companies, which is very good. But these mini grids need a lot of capex, and it's not so easy for private companies to find the equity and also the debt to develop this type of grids, and then the concessionality and involvement of government is very key. For example, in Nigeria, you have some grants to help the developers, so it's very useful, but you need to have a sort of partnership between public and private. For the CNI, maybe CNI is the most private segment, and with growth in revenues and also in rapid cost. So maybe it's one of the most bankable as of today for investor and lenders. And we also see a lot of new off-grid energy products that leverage on this. For example, with the clean cooking, with e-mobility, and it's very there are a lot of potential for these new technologies, but it's quite new, and it's also evolving, and so the economics are not still proved, and we need to wait to find the good business model yet.
Yeah, fantastic. You just led us to the next topic that I wanted to discuss with you guys, which is economic transformation. So these new emerging technologies that are forming the industries are very, very interesting. And my question is now to Dr. Satyam, as a visionary guru. What do you think by 2040, with the help of AI and quantum computing, which new industries would energy plus AI unlock in Africa?
That's a tough question. But no, I think 2040, I think it may be sooner. But there are a couple of things to think about. When we talk about AI, everybody talks about AI, but we have to understand where AI comes from, right? One of the technologies that most people don't talk in AI conferences is nanotechnology. Without nanotechnology, nothing we would be talking about AI. The second one is biotechnology and synthetic biology. A lot of these motivations to build algorithms that we use today, whether it is the generative AI, whether it is the what you call chat GPTs or the deep learning, they all come from the understanding of our brain, how that works, how the neurons work. So understanding biotechnology, synthetic biology is an important part of it. Of course, then now once you have got the nanotechnology, you can build chips that are important, whether it is the GPUs or whether it is the quantum processing units or QPUs. And now there are something called NPUs. So there is a lot of generation of chips happening. That also requires another technology that is mature now, which is called the 3D and 4D printing. So this, if you think of it, there is an ecosystem of technologies that we have to learn and actually implement it. Just saying, oh, everybody wants AI, that's not the right way to actually build an ecosystem and progress a nation. So, right, so in 2040, I think there will be a, what I call multidisciplinary education system that will generate the next generation of talent, which I, in different talks, I call them the avatar talents, because that means this talent has to be versatile and transformative at all the time. As the new things we learn, we can actually implement it. So for example, going back to the previous question, when we talked about contract management, today, a lot of companies are actually building applications on generative AI models so that they can reduce all that words that nobody can understand into something that they can understand and act upon it. So that means the people who are dealing with contracts, they have to transform themselves. Otherwise, that how to leverage ChatGPT or whatever the LLM model you want to use. Same thing, how do I build the next generation of chips? For example, if you want to miniaturize our chemistry, I met an investor here, and he is carrying a small chip which fits for a spectrometer into your hands. Now look at that. Like, this will change the way we think about how chemical analysis can be done. Today, if you go to a lab, you need a spectrometer of this size. But the same thing we can be done energy, for example, wind energy. How do we rotate the windmill or orientation of it by leveraging industrial IoT sensors, not just the IoT sensors. Now those sensors are becoming smaller and smaller. They respond at a real time. So that will happen. And by 2040, we will see a significant miniaturization of a lot of technologies. Combination of the various methodologies of this technology come together, and the next generation of workforce that is technology savvy. So for that, we have to really start educating our people now from 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, whatever the right approach is, and implement that methodology of educating even the leaders of the companies now so that they can understand how to actually train their workforce by next 5 years. So by 2040, we are in a much more stable state.
It seems to me that if I'm listening to you, the future is actually very bright, because we're going to have not only emergence in all sorts of industries and growth because we're trying to solve this clean energy problem, but we're going to have to also witness a convergence of different technologies to take us to a better future. So with this in mind, Fabrice, question to you. You're an investor, and where would you invest for growth in Africa to enable all of this?
First, I think AI can bring a lot to develop the access to energy for off-grid, as you discussed before, but also for the grids, because one on the main issues of the electricity access in Africa is also the grid loss. And just to give you an illustration, in Africa, the grid loss amounts to 23%, whereas globally it's only 10% and only 5% in Europe. So because of that, there's direct consequences on electricity operators and also indirectly on people, because you don't have the energy, access to the energy which is produced in reality. So you have the production of the energy, but not the access. And last year we have invested in a startup which operates in Nigeria, Zambia, and Ghana, and just aims to reduce this grid loss thanks to the AI. They have developed an AI mapping program just to map all the topological assets of the grids. And thanks to that, they can identify very efficiently whereas the underperformed assets of the networks of the grids, and which assets has to be maintained, and so they can generate automatically predictive maintenance. And thanks to this AI program, Beacon Powers is the name of these companies, aims to reduce by 50% the grid loss, and also to increase indirectly the revenues of the electricity operators by 30%. So I think, yes, there is a lot to do with AI, and that this new technology can change the way as the electricity and the energy more globally is used in Africa and in emerging countries.
Yeah, you have raising a great point. It's not enough just to have a technology powered by AI. You actually have to have a way to deliver that technology to people. And grid and access to a grid is one of those things. My last question is to Dr. Muez. Given what Fabrice just said, what do you think a major economic opportunity for African nations are in AI-driven energy transition, and how can policy mitigate risks?
So the economic opportunity is in the resources available in the continent, right? A lot of sub-Saharan African countries have a lot of resources. Some of them don't have any. And in general, most likely that most of the countries in Africa are going to be kind of receivers or consumers of technology as opposed to creators of technology. And that is just because of the way the world is kind of set up. But in order to leverage these resources, I think we need to have very serious discussions about global trade policy, the global financial architecture, technology transfer. So for example, because of global intellectual property rules, a lot of African countries can't access new technologies because, you know, countries that develop, for example, new vaccine technology or new sort of medication for endemic diseases, they own the intellectual property for 20 years, for example. So, you know, the three main issues: trade, finance, and technology transfer. And because of the way these global issues are structured today, African countries are unlikely to be able to kind of compete with other countries because they're technically disadvantaged. So in order to leverage these resources, we need to have serious discussions about these issues. For example, now in the energy sector, to actually produce, you know, certain technologies or whatever it may be. So ideally, you want Namibia to produce the hydrogen, but also use the hydrogen, right? So while, you know, this shift to hydrogen, which is a clean technology, and using new technologies to produce it, is kind of technological innovation and development and leapfrogging, etc., but it still has extractive characteristics. So I think in order for the economic opportunities there, because there are certain endowments that you cannot do away with, but in order for these endowments to have any sort of useful impact for Africa's economic growth, there needs to be serious discussions about about Africa's role in global trade, in access to finance and in technology transfer. And finance is a big issue because a lot of African countries still rely on getting bailed out by the IMF, which comes with certain conditions, right? And this has been happening since the 70s, and it still hasn't changed, right? So we have to have these discussions to try and understand or try and change. There are certain initiatives that are underway, but they're still scratching at the surface. And unfortunately, the people who are kind of, you know, really shouting about these issues do not get invited to, you know, panels or global fora to discuss these issues because they seem to be at the margin. But these are the issues that need to be discussed in a lot of seriousness in order to tackle these. Otherwise, we will continue having extractive practices like we have today in the Congo.
Indeed, if you're producing energy, you should be able to supply with the energy in your own country and your own continent. So definitely infrastructure projects would be a big topic to enable the hydrogen economy in Africa. And I really like your point about public and private sector partnerships to enable all of that. And of course, policy needs to support. So we got about 4 minutes and we can take 1 or 2 questions from the audience. Please state your name, your affiliation, and the name of the panelist you want to ask the question to. Do we have any questions? You guys awake? Okay, we got a brave one. It's all right, we'll wait. Unfortunately, I cannot see you because the light is shining in my eyes. Ah, that's better. If you could raise your hand, where a question, yeah, just in the middle and the back row there.
Hello again, my name is Millouki Rihab. I'm a PhD student. I'm currently working on protein exchange membrane electrolyzers to produce more hydrogen. And my question will be for Sir Fabrice Perez, right? So my question to you, sir, is how does the international agreement influence the country's approach to green hydrogen, and why, despite all of the effort done by France, it's still depending massively on nuclear power? And thank you.
Oh, good question.
Thank you for the question. It's not on my scope of competencies.
It's about green hydrogen, though. No?
Green hydrogen, yeah, but I'm not a scientist, so you know we only invest in off-grid, and so I can help you on that point. I'm sorry.
Fabrice is an investor. It's, I think it's a challenging question for him. Maybe other panelists can take it up?
I can take a chance because this is a discussion not only in France, but it's all over the place. Which technologies we can generate energy with? Can we use it in the same country? There is all discussions about cost benefit analysis that goes on. How the policies are made and how the energy, if researchers are creating new things, that may not be cost effective for the country at that time. So they are trying to actually export it and make some money. So this is a combination of regulatory, pricing, and advantage to the local economy. So I think that's why it gets complicated, whether it is France or whether it is any other nation for that matter.
Yeah, on the hydrogen, I would add green hydrogen specifically. One, it requires water for production, which means that we need to be conscious about how we use water and what is the impact on the aquatic systems of that. And two, green hydrogen infrastructure needs to be built. We can't just use gas or LNG infrastructure because green hydrogen makes piping brittle. And so there's the whole question about building the global infrastructure for it. So at the moment, it's not really economically viable, which is, I'm assuming that this is the reason why France still fostering nuclear energy. All right, I think we are at the time. So really brief round, 20 seconds each. What advice would you guys give to innovators, policymakers, and investors looking to shape the future of sustainable energy in Africa? We will start with you, Dr. Satyam.
I think what I will say is learn and practice what is happening with new technologies, because that's the future, and that's the future of humanity as well.
Fabrice.
Maybe to repeat what I said before, sustainability should be key, and we need to scale new models, but to be sure that they fit to the customer needs and to what the people needs, in fact.
Dr. Muez.
On the policy aspect, while local policies are important, and local policies do drive economic growth, but I think some of the major obstacles are global. So I think, learn about the global policy issues, and that these issues need to be discussed at a global level in order for not just sub-Saharan Africa, but a lot of global South countries to move forward.
Excellent. To summarize our panel, we discussed various issues about how to enable sustainable energy in Africa. We said the future is bright. There's going to be a lot of industries booming in the future. We just need to make sure there is a product market fit and it's viable, and that the policies that support those products' adoption are in place. I would like to thank our panelists for this very thoughtful and interesting discussion. Please give us a round of applause, and thank you very much for your attention.